Start it.
Great.
It's going.
All right, well, is this, yeah, I see the recording button on my end, Dave. Well, let's get started then. I think some folks are still hopping on. Welcome everybody to the Second Century Stewardship Research Fellowship Request for Proposals informational webinar. Looks like almost everybody is muted. You can please mute yourselves. There'll be a chance at the end to ask questions. And there is the chat box in which you can ask those questions. Abe had already welcomed you in the chat, so you should see that there on my screen. It's in the top right-hand corner. We'll get going here. Our presentation will be 30 or 40 minutes, and then there'll be lots of time for questions and answers. So thanks everybody for logging in. And I'm Nick Fisichella. I'm the president and CEO with Schoodic Institute at Acadia National Park. And also we have Abe Miller-Rushing will be co-presenting with me today. He's the science coordinator here at Acadia National Park. And again, you can put questions in the chat box. So the outline, we'll go through 3 parts in our webinar here today. A quick overview of Second Century Stewardship. SCS is the acronym we use for Second Century Stewardship. Nuts and bolts of the fellowship, background information on Acadia National Park, and the types of research proposals that we are looking for, and then how to apply to the fellowship. All right, SCS, Second Century Stewardship. This initiative began in 2016. It's a public-private partnership among the National Park Service, Schoodic Institute at Acadia National Park, the David Evans Shaw Family Foundation, and the National Park Foundation. And the goal of SCS is really to advance conservation science. I just got a slow internet warning there. Let's see. There we go. Sorry about that. So goals of Second Century Stewardship are really to advance conservation science in parks, and to increase the public understanding and support of science in parks and parks for science, and to increase public engagement as well in that science, and to really drive solutions to the critical conservation challenges that places such as national parks face today. And the fellowship program that we have here in Acadia National Park, it's ongoing since 2016. So 2021 will be the 5th year that we have fellows, and we'll be bringing on hopefully 2 to 3 new fellows in 2021. Again, with that goal of enhancing our understanding of conservation science, informing park management. As I'll mention in the next slide, communicating the science is a big part of our fellowships and Second Century Stewardship, and setting up that potential for long-term research in parks. So again, advancing science communication, this is a big component of Second Century Stewardship and the fellowships, that we're looking for fellows that are really interested in communicating their science to many different audiences. And we don't expect you to come in necessarily as an expert science communicator. You might already be, but we don't necessarily have that expectation or requirement, but there is opportunity for communication training through the fellowship. And then also help with connecting your research as appropriate through different channels such as social media, radio shows, interviews with journalists, etc. And so communication is really critical, and national parks are just amazing platforms for talking about science and getting people excited about science. And beyond that communication, also infusing the science and research into education in parks. And there's lots of different ways that can happen through these fellowships, as well with some of the existing education programs that happen through the National Park Service and Schoodic Institute and our collaborators. And really the big goal of these fellowships in Second Century Stewardship to really bring insights from the science to inform management and ultimately policy as well, and to bring together experts and convene those experts to tackle these major conservation challenges that we face under rapidly changing environmental conditions. So that's a quick overview of Second Century Stewardship. We'll dive into the nuts and bolts next. I'll mention it again later, but you can also find more information at the csparkscience.org. That's our web address for the web pages for Second Century Stewardship. Again, that's scsparkscience.org. So nuts and bolts for the fellowship. Really, basically, almost anybody can apply for this. You just have to be living here in the States, and you can't be an employee of Schoodic Institute or the National Park Service. Really, anybody else is eligible. We encourage early career scientists, but that's just encourage. It's not a requirement. We have awarded fellowships to graduate students, to postdocs, to assistant professors, to associate professors, to people at all stages in their careers. The application requirements are pretty standard. I won't go into details here. You can read the RFP for the full details, but it's pretty standard. It's a relatively short application. The narrative piece is 3 pages. So it is not super long. And the one bit of advice on that is that there will be people from outside your discipline reviewing your application. So just keep that in mind as you're writing to avoid jargon and make sure that scientists or managers who may be outside your area of expertise will be able to follow your proposal. The awards, the awards here, you can have a budget up to $20,000 for the fellowship, and that the grant can last a total of 1 to 2 years. And there's a good bit of flexibility in what you propose to include in the budget. We recognize that $20,000 is not all on its own enough typically to carry out a full research project, and so you're probably going to be pulling from other funding that you have as well, and that's fine in the budget. You can just denote what's coming from the Second Century Stewardship Fellowship. And one other perk of the fellowship, we do have housing available on the Schoodic Institute campus for your stay while you're doing research in the park. And also the communication training is another component of the fellowship, and you don't have to budget for the training for you don't have to budget time for the training. And there's expectation, of course, to spend time during the fellowship on communication work, and that's also spelled out in the RFP. I believe we say 80 hours of time on communications work. Evaluation criteria, we're really trying to use pretty standard criteria here: intellectual merit, the relevance to park management and ability to inform park managers on conservation challenges that they are facing. And again, the potential to really to get set up for long-term research in parks is another component that we are looking for here. And there, parks are theoretically around for forever and are amazing places to do research and to set up long-term research. We know a lot about Acadia thanks to research that began back in the late 1800s. And so we recognize the value of that long-term research and the potential to set up new long-term research through these fellowships. The weighting on the criteria here, this is also in the RFP, certainly looking for strong proposals that advance knowledge within and across disciplines. We recognize that in this RFP, there may be graduate students as well as professors who are both competing for a fellowship, and we certainly take into account where you are in your professional trajectory and won't expect a graduate student to have the same level of experience or length of experience in publications as a professor would have. There are some reporting requirements for the fellowship. They are not onerous, and they are related to the research permit that is required for doing work in Acadia National Park. Abe, I think, will mention that briefly as well, but just a short annual report, a paragraph on the work each year, and then a final report, which could be the manuscript that you pull together from your research. And then certainly any communication products that you work on or work with us on are also parts of the reporting for the fellowship. And I had to, of course, add in a slide on COVID-19. Couldn't go through anything these days without mentioning it. We certainly recognize that COVID-19 is happening and that we will be flexible in working with you all as fellows next year. We don't know what 2021 will look like, but of course we will expect fellows to follow all the appropriate health and safety guidelines, and you should propose your research assuming that COVID-19 will not have major impacts to it. I know you have to propose research now that you would be doing most likely next summer, so 10 months from now, it's hard to know what things will be like given COVID. So we ask that you be flexible, and we will be flexible as well, and work with the fellows to help them get their research done given whatever constraints exist for COVID-19 next summer. The proposals are due at 11:59 p.m. on October 29th. We'll then go through an internal review process over the subsequent months, with award notifications happening in spring, March or April of 2021. All right, with that, I will hand it over to Abe Miller-Rushing to talk about Acadia and research priorities.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And so I'm going to just kind of introduce a little bit of background about Acadia. For some of you are probably very familiar and have done research here in the past, but for those of you who haven't, a little intro into it. First, I'll start with the National Park Service mission. Our mission is is short, but it has several elements to it. So to preserve unimpaired natural and cultural resources for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. So one key point there is, as Nick said, we're in the forever business. So we're trying to keep these natural and cultural resources unimpaired for the long run. And so we're doing conservation on the natural side. We're also preserving the cultural resources. And we have this other element to our mission of really promoting enjoyment, education, and inspiration. So that we do a lot for the full socio-ecological system, and that makes us that's part of the reason why we really are promoting this science and communication end of the work for the fellowship. We're specifically working towards this vision of roles for parks and an approach to resource stewardship that's been outlined by the Park Service. So a vision of national parks as natural laboratories, as tellers of science narratives, and of exemplars of using science to manage natural and cultural resources and connect those and enrich kind of experiences. And we're trying to do that in this kind of changing world. And again, trying to maintain the long-term ecological and cultural integrity. Of course, how to define the long-term ecological and cultural integrity as things change, that's actually something that you could absolutely propose to study. That's an open question. It's our goal, but it's not particularly well defined just yet. The park is changing really fast. Basically, you name it in Acadia, and it's changing. Our plants, about 1 out of every 6 of the plant species that were here 100 years ago when the park was founded are now gone. We have more non-native plant species that have taken their place. We have vector-borne diseases showing up, species like ticks that weren't here, black-legged ticks that weren't here 30 years ago or so are showing up, and Lyme disease is now a big problem here. There are phenological mismatches happening between seabirds and their fish for diets. Water quality things is actually right now we're seeing rebounds in water quality in a lot of ways after as lakes recover from acid rain, and so things are shifting to a different stable state. And we're seeing increased storm damage and a lot of action going on in the intertidal zone, especially relationships with local stakeholders like clammers and marine worm harvesters. So these are all it's a very dynamic system, and you can really study any part of it, but it creates a big challenge for us to have to understand these changes, the causes of these changes, and the consequences of them, and how we manage that changing system. And so we're really shifting our approach. We're thinking about the whole socio-ecological system, trying to get rid of what used to be kind of highly segmented and divided programs, wildlife, vegetation, water and air quality, and things like that, and really thinking about the whole system, taking an adaptive management approach, planning and doing, and then learning, and then doing it all over again. And a part of that is integrating science into the management strategy. So an example of that is we're doing a vegetation restoration project on Cadillac Mountain. We're intentionally taking an experimental approach, testing out different methods and moving forward with the ones that seem to work best. And that's really going to be more and more our approach that we take going forward, because it's hard to know how to manage in a changing environment. And we're also engaging community and partners a lot more than we have in the past, recognizing again that this is a real full socio-ecological system, and people are big players in this system, and so we have to engage them as we make decisions and figure out our way forward. And so what are we looking for in these proposals as we go forward, as you're writing these proposals up? The goals of the research fellowships are, again, to advance conservation and ecosystem science, inform management, communicate science, and look for the potential for long-term research. And so if you hit all these points, that's a very good place to start. are looking for, we don't have particular fields of study that we're looking for. In fact, we're really interested in interdisciplinary stuff. So this is just to give you a range. This is not, you can propose things outside this list, but it's just to give you an idea of the range. Citizen science, communication, recreation science, sustainability, economics, traditional ecology, which tends to be a lot of what we get in terms of proposals, but you can propose things really different from those. Successful proposals will really inform management, address priority information needs, be cost effective. Reviewers will be thinking about, is your proposed work doable? Does it seem like you can achieve it in the timeline and with the resources that you outline? And provide evidence that you're committed to connecting your research to management and communicating it to different audiences. You don't necessarily have to have a lot of experience doing that, but we just want to see that you're committed to doing that in the future. Great ideas that could work if properly thought out. So a lot of people think that national parks are super restrictive in terms of what we allow. Here at Acadia, we like to allow a lot of kind of innovative science going on. We do try to minimize impact to the natural and cultural resources, but you can do manipulative experiments out in the field, and we can work with you on how to make these things doable. Feel free to contact us. You can test management actions to influence the behavior of visitors. You can test out technology, you can do archaeological or ethnographic stuff, use museum specimens. We have museum collections that have over 1 million items here at the park. And so you can propose to do research on some of those specimens, which include biological specimens as well as documents and photographs and other things. And you can do lots of other things. So and we're particularly encouraging this year multi-park projects as well. So please do, if you're working in another park, feel free to propose to add Acadia to your slate. Another way to look and see what we're looking for is to look at the 12 fellows that have come before, that we have already been funded, and you can find those at the website scsparkscience.org. That gives you an idea of the range of folks. I'll just mention that almost all of them are interdisciplinary projects, but they run the gamut of disciplines, of kind of focal areas. But they all do have a management component. A lot of them have a social science element to them, even if the primary PI isn't a social scientist. So I'll go through like 3 examples of the projects. One, just highlighting that we do allow kind of interesting manipulations, was Alessio Mortality at the University of Maine. He brought in seeds from trees that grew further to the south, as well as trees that grow here locally, and tested how small mammals like squirrels and chipmunks and others would react to them in terms of food preference and caching preference, to see how small mammals would influence their ability to germinate and grow once they get here. And so you can see this, he's published it, but in Oikos here at the bottom of the page, you can see the reference and look it up. But just to give you an idea that we do allow, under controlled circumstances, kind of assisted migration kinds of experiments. We have other ones going on in the park right now as well. Another one is work by Chris Nadeau, who's now at Northeastern University. He was using rock pools, which are freshwater puddles, essentially, just above the intertidal, which are functioning ecosystems, from algae to daphnia, to mosquito larvae and the like. And he was able to use these as kind of model systems to test how they responded to changes in temperature and precipitation. And he was able to set up controlled manipulations here, where you see on the right hand of the photograph, like little tubs where he could manipulate temperature and like the open top greenhouse, or keep out a certain amount of precipitation, and kind of increase the replication of these rock pools as experimental ecosystems, essentially creating what is something like a lab mouse for ecosystem ecology, and testing out different management applications. And another project is that of Ali Gardner, looking at the factors that drive the distribution of ticks and disease prevalence in the ticks, Lyme disease and other diseases that they carry in the park. And she was able to connect it back to distribution of fire in 1947. And she was able to find that actually where our people are tends to also be where our ticks are in the park. But that was another one connected to public health. And I guess I have 4 examples. I misnumbered there. My last example is here, Bonnie Newsome, doing archaeological research, revisiting some archaeological specimens in our collections, as well as a couple of archaeological sites, looking at, from a Wabanaki Native American perspective, how reinterpreting these specimens to look at how Wabanaki lives and some of the historical connections with the park for the tribes that were present here historically and still have relationships with the park. So a wide variety of kind of approaches that you can take. So back to some kind of nuts and bolts, permitting and other requirements. Everybody, all the fellows, all the research that happens in Acadia requires a permit. It allows us to document what's going on, and get it reviewed to make sure that we are avoiding negative long-term impacts to park resources. And there are other permitting requirements depending upon the kind of work you're doing. Whether if it's human subjects research, you'll have to get IRB from your home institution is fine. Animal care and use, that you can use your home institution. We do have another layer of review at the Park Service, our own Animal Care and Use Committee. And then there's the reporting, same kind of reporting that Nick mentioned earlier, required for all research permits in the park. We will connect you with mentors that can help work with you on your project design, or to tweak it, or even just tweak the communication of it to make sure that it's super relevant to research. And we'll facilitate a lot of interactions with park staff and other managers, and facilitate revisions to, and help incorporate it into park management plans and whatnot, depending upon the nature of your project. We'll have education and communication experts. Nick already mentioned that there'll be about 80 hours. You can expect about 80 hours of education and communication related activities. When you're budgeting your time, that's helpful to know kind of as an estimate. And depending upon the kind of work you're proposing and the target audiences that would be interested in it, we can help you work with school groups, interpretive programs, videos, and whatnot. And now that's it for me. I'm gonna pass it back to Nick to finish up with some details on how to apply.
Great, thanks, Abe. Yeah, application process. All of this is done online through our application portal, and all that information can be found on the scsparkscience.org website on the apply page. And the application portal should be open now. You have to go into it and log in, create a user login name and password, and then all the components of the application are submitted through that portal. And you can go in and start and save and log out and go back in at a later time to continue the application. And see if I can advance the slide here. Yeah, it looks something like this here, where you can certainly work offline in a document and then cut and paste for some of the components. Others you can upload a PDF of a document for example, for your CV and for the project narrative. So again, that can all be found on the scsparkscience.org website. And if you have questions, here are the links. Oh, I went one too far. Oh, Abe, can you go back to that?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, just to the last slide. Awesome. Yeah, here are some of the links where you can find more information. And you can send questions to scsparkscience@schoodicinstitute.org. Emma will be the first one to look at your questions and answer them, or send them on to one of us to respond to you. And with that, we can open it up to questions that folks have. There's one question about slides. The recording of this webinar and the slides will post on the SCS Park Science website.
Any other questions? We can wait a minute for folks to write anything. Oh, a list of museum specimens. You can find sorry, finding aids. There are finding aids online at IRMA. You can actually see it. It's the next to last website there listed on this closing slide, irma.nps.gov. If you have specific questions about items, types of items that you suspect we might have in our collections, feel free to email us and let us know, and we can give kind of dialogue with you about those questions. There is also, if you go to our park webpage here, just above irma.nps.gov, you can find, if you search around in that park website, there is a museum website too, where you can correspond directly with our museum curator. But you can email us and we can connect you with her too.
Hello, I have a quick questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh yeah, first of all, thanks for your nice presentation and providing the many information about the research proposals. So I have a question about the research topic. So for example, my research area is focused on the biofuel, bioenergy, and the sustainability using the waste material. So this type of the research topic is available for this research proposal, or are you looking for the specific the research proposal for the funding?
So you were working on techniques to develop bioenergy? Is that what I was gathering?
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's the part. Yes.
It might be useful that might be of interest, but it might be beyond the scope of of what we're interested in, but it would probably be worth talking more offline about kind of the specifics of what you're thinking about, um, and how it might work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely we are interested
Okay.
in kind of climate friendly parks and reducing the footprint, the kind of carbon footprint and whatnot of the park, including waste and whatnot. And so if, depending upon the angle that you're taking it, it might be of interest, but it could also be beyond the scope. But we can definitely talk more about that. Did you want to add anything to that, Nick?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks, Abe, and thank you for that question. We had another question. Are projects ever under a year in duration, or is that the minimum length? And I would say they could be under a year in duration. They should be commensurate to the research. What's a realistic amount of time necessary to do the work? They certainly could be under a year if that's what's needed to get the work done.
Okay.
Let's see, there was another question. Is it okay to discuss the project with Schoodic staff we have worked with in the past or want to work with? From Laura. Yeah, you certainly can reach out to discuss projects. We're happy, just like we just did with the bioenergy question. We're certainly happy to answer questions about projects, about topics relevant to management and research in the park. Abe, you want to add anything to that?
I guess just that, right. And you can reach out to any of the staff directly if you know them or would or want to, and we can connect you too if you ask us a question and it seems like it's relevant to visitor studies or social science. We have a social scientist on our park staff who can talk with you about those project ideas and others. And so it's totally fine, and may benefit you to talk with our staff to make sure you frame a project to be really targeted for particular management priorities that we have.
Abe, there's a question from a researcher who's doing a fair bit of work down at Jean Lafitte in New Orleans, and wondering about framing a project here at Acadia that might be relevant also to work down in New Orleans. Any suggestions on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, certainly. We've actually have worked with Jean Lafitte some on both citizen science, and we've at least talked with them about managing changing coastlines. The coastline is changing at Jean Lafitte quite a bit faster than it is here. We don't. Our coastline is mostly rocky, and their coastline is very not rocky. And so, but I think that a lot of the management questions are similar. And so, again, it would be possible to talk with us directly about project ideas. Could even set up phone calls between some of the staff down at Jean Lafitte and here at Acadia, depending upon what your interest is, to be able to develop a good project idea.
Right. Every park, parks are facing the same global change issues, whether sea level rise or warming temperatures or other changes. And so how they're affecting parks may be different. How the parks may be responding could be different, but that certainly makes for interesting research. And it could include Katahdin woods and waters. Laura asked about that. That certainly could be another park to include in research.
Yeah, and well, and one, just to get back to the Jean Lafitte, I see archaeologists, right, there's an interesting Acadia connection the Acadian people connection between Jean Lafitte and this region as well. So anyhow, another interesting angle. So we can connect people. We can connect you to the right people depending upon your interest. And yes, you can also reach out to staff at other parks about collaborative projects, whether it's Katahdin Woods and Waters or others. I think Katahdin Woods and Waters just got a recently, at least they were planning on it. I don't know if they have a new chief of resource management just yet. If you have a hard time getting a hold of somebody there, we can help put you in touch with the right people there as well. But yeah, that's a brand new park, and so there's going to be a lot of overlap in scientific questions that you can do, again, from coastal to inland gradients or other things.
Those are all great questions. Anyone have another question for us? And if a question comes up after the webinar, feel free to reach out to us by email. All right, well, with that, I will thank everybody so much for attending the webinar today, and we look forward to seeing your applications.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day.